There's a moment that arrives unannounced in certain lives, a moment when the fabric of ordinary existence seems to shimmer and reveal something beneath. It is not dramatic in the way that stories promise. There is no burning bush, no angelic proclamation, no scroll delivered by fate. Instead, it comes as a feeling, quiet and persistent, that the world you've been living does not quite fit the shape of your soul. You may have felt it as a child, staring at the sky longer than others, asking questions that seem to trouble the adults around you. You may have felt it in adolescence, when the values everyone else accepted felt hollow in your hands, like props in a play you never auditioned for. And perhaps you feel it now, as you listen to these words, as though something ancient and nameless is being spoken directly to the part of you that has always known it was here for something more than mere repetition of days. This feeling has been called many things across the ages. In myth, it is the call to adventure. In psychology, it is individuation, the process by which the unconscious self begins to demand recognition. In spirituality, it is awakening. But beneath all these names lies a singular truth, the recognition that you are not only the person the world has told you to be, but also the person your innermost nature insists you must become. This recognition does not make you special in the way the ego craves specialness. It does not elevate you above others or grant you secret knowledge that others lack. Instead, it places upon you a responsibility, the responsibility to stop pretending, to stop hiding, to stop living as though your inner voice is something to be ignored or medicated or silenced in the name of normalcy. The archetype of the chosen one is as old as storytelling itself. It appears in every culture, every tradition, every mythological system that humanity has ever created. The hero marked by destiny, the one who carries a burden no one else can carry, the individual who must walk a path that others cannot see. But here is the secret that modern interpretations often miss. The chosen one is not chosen by the gods or by fate, or by some external cosmic lottery. The chosen one is chosen by their own soul's refusal to remain asleep. It is an internal election, a quiet rebellion of the authentic self against a constructed self, the persona built to survive in a world that rewards conformity and punishes depth. If you have spent your life feeling like you do not quite belong, if you have always sensed that there was a script everyone else received that you somehow missed, if you have looked around at the structures of society, the hierarchies of power, the systems of belief, and felt a deep unease rather than comfort, then you know this feeling. It is not arrogance. It is not delusion. It is pattern recognition. Your psyche has detected a misalignment between what is true and what is accepted, between what is real and what is performed, and it refuses to let you rest in performance. And perhaps, if you felt drawn to continue this journey with us, to explore these ancient patterns that live within the human soul, you might consider staying a while, walking this path alongside others who have also felt the quiet tremor of awakening. There is no obligation, only an open door. The earliest memory of this difference often comes in childhood. You were the one who felt too much, who noticed too much, who could sense the emotional climate of a room before a word was spoken. You absorbed the unspoken tensions between your parents, the hidden sadness in your teacher's eyes, the loneliness of the other child sitting alone at recess. While others seem to move through life with a kind of blessed obliviousness, you carry the weight of invisible things. This is not a gift in the way that fairy tales describe gifts. It is a heightened sensitivity that can feel more like a wound than a blessing, because it means you cannot unsee, you cannot unfeel, you cannot pretend that everything is fine when the undercurrents tell a different story. This sensitivity often leads to isolation, not because you are ejected, though sometimes you are, but because you learn early that your inner world is too complex, too deep, too intense for a casual conversation. You learn to edit yourself, to translate your experiences into language that will not alarm or confuse or bore the people around you. You develop a social mask, a version of yourself that can navigate the world without revealing the full depth of what you perceive and feel. And beneath that mask, the real you waits, patient and persistent, knowing that one day the performance will become unbearable and the choice will have to be made. The mythological structure of the hero's journey begins with the separation from the ordinary world. The hero must leave the village, cross the threshold, enter the forest where the known rules no longer apply. In psychological terms, this is a movement away from collective consciousness, from the safety of shared beliefs and inherited values. into the wilderness of individual consciousness, where nothing is certain and everything must be questioned. This is not a physical journey, though it may involve physical changes. It is primarily an inner migration, a willingness to sit with the unknown, to tolerate the anxiety of not having answers, to resist the temptation to retreat into comfortable illusions. Many who feel this call resist it for years, even decades. The pull toward authenticity is strong, but the fear of isolation is stronger. What if you speak your truth and everyone leaves? What if you stop pretending and discover that the life you built was entirely dependent on the pretense? What if you remove the mask and find that no one recognizes you, or worse, that you do not recognize yourself? These are not trivial fears. They touch the core of human survival instinct, the need to belong, to be accepted, to be part of the tribe. And so the inner tension builds, the knowing grows louder, but the movement toward it remains paralyzed by fear. This paralysis is its own kind of trial. In alchemy, it is called the nigredo, the blackening, the stage of dissolution where everything you thought you were begins to break down. In the dark night of the soul, it is the moment when all meaning collapses and you are left in a void of your own making. It feels like death because, in a sense, it is death. The death of false self, the constructed identity, the persona that was never truly you, but that you wore so long began to feel like skin. And in that death, there is terror, because you do not yet know what will be born in its place. But here is the paradox. The very thing that feels like annihilation is also the doorway to liberation. The dissolution of the false self creates space for the true self to emerge. Not the ego's fantasy of the true self, not some idealized version of who you wish you were, but the raw, unpolished, deeply human reality of who you actually are beneath all the conditioning, all the trauma, all the adaptation. This self is not always pretty. It carries wounds. It has made mistakes. It contains shadow as well as light. But it is real in a way that the persona never was. And that reality is a foundation upon which everything else must be built. The trials of this journey are not external, though they may manifest externally. They are fundamentally internal confrontations with the parts of yourself you have denied, rejected, or projected onto others. The anger you were taught to suppress, the grief you were told to get over, the desire you were shamed for feeling, the power you were afraid to claim. Each of these denied aspects becomes a dragon in the mythological landscape of your psyche, and each must be faced not slain, but integrated. Because the goal is not to become pure or perfect or free of darkness. The goal is to become whole, to reclaim all the parts of yourself that were exiled in the name of acceptability. This process is deeply uncomfortable. It requires you to sit with contradictions, to hold opposing truths simultaneously, to accept that you are both wounded and resilient, both selfish and compassionate, both afraid and courageous. The human mind resists this complexity. It wants clear categories, simple answers, heroes and villains. But the journey toward wholeness demands that you transcend this binary thinking, that you develop capacity to see yourself and others with nuance, with mercy, with an understanding that everyone is doing the best they can with the level of consciousness they currently possess. And as you move through this terrain, as you begin to integrate what was once fragmented, something shifts. The world does not change, but your relationship to it does. You begin to see the patterns, the repetitions, the unconscious scripts that most people are following without ever questioning. You see how fear drives so much of human behavior, how the need for security and certainty leads to rigidity and defensiveness, how the refusal to face inner pain creates endless cycles of outer conflict. And you feel compassion, not superiority, because you recognize that you too have been caught in these patterns, that your own awakening is not a mark of being better, but simply the result of having been pushed to the edge of your own illusions until they could no longer hold. There is a moment in many wisdom traditions when the seeker realizes that the journey is not about reaching some distant destination, but about becoming conscious of what has always been present. The kingdom of heaven is within. The Buddha nature is your original face. The true self is not something you acquire, but something you uncover. All the searching, all the striving, all the effort to become someone worthy or special or chosen, it is revealed as a grand distortion. You were never not whole. You were never not connected to the source of all being. You simply forgot, buried under layers of conditioning and trauma and societal programming. And the journey is remembering. This remembering is both humbling and liberating. Humbling because it dissolves the ego's need to be unique or superior. Liberating because it removes the burden of having to prove your worth or earn your place in existence. You are here because existence itself chose to express through a particular form you inhabit, not because you are better than anyone else, but because you are a unique expression of the same universal consciousness that animates all life. The blade of grass, the distant star, the stranger on the street, all manifestations of the same underlying reality, and you are invited not to stand above them, but to recognize your kinship with them. But even this recognition, beautiful as it is, must be lived, not just understood intellectually. And this is where the real work begins. Because knowing that you are not separate from the world does not automatically heal the ways you have learned to protect yourself from the world. Knowing that you carry divinity within does not erase the wounds that make you feel unworthy of that divinity. The mind can grasp these truths in an instant, but the nervous system, the emotional body, the deeply ingrained patterns of thought and behavior, these require patience, repetition, and compassion to transform. Perhaps, as you sit with these reflections, you sense that this journey is one you're already on, one you've been on longer than you realized. And if these words feel like a companion to that path, like a reminder that you're not alone in the complexity of this becoming, then you are welcome here, in this space we are creating together, for as long as it serves your unfolding. The shadow work, the integration of denied aspects, is not a one-time event but an ongoing practice. Each layer you peel back reveals another layer beneath. Each dragon you befriend reveals another dragon lurking in the deeper caves of your psyche. This is not failure. This is a nature of depth. The psyche is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. And the more you explore it, the more you realize how much there is to explore, how vast and intricate the inner landscape truly is. In this exploration, you will encounter parts of yourself that frighten you. The capacity for cruelty, the pleasure in another's suffering, the desire to control and dominate. These are not aberrations. They are part of the human inheritance, the evolutionary legacy of a species that survived by being able to fight, to compete, to prioritize its own survival above all else. The question is not whether these impulses exist within you, because they exist within everyone. The question is what you do with them. Do you deny them and project them onto others, seeing evil only outside yourself? Do you identify with them and act them out unconsciously, justifying harm in the name of self-interest? Or do you acknowledge them, understand their origins, and consciously choose how and when to channel their energy in service of something larger than your own ego? This conscious choice is the essence of moral development. It is not about following rules imposed from outside, but about cultivating an internal compass that guides you toward actions that honor the interconnectedness of all life. And this compass is not infallible. You will make mistakes. You will hurt people despite your best intentions. You will fall back into unconscious patterns you thought you had transcended. But each time you recognize this, each time you take responsibility rather than deflecting blame, each time you choose to repair rather than rationalize, you strengthen the muscle of consciousness, the ability to witness yourself and choose differently. The archetype of the chosen one often involves a great burden, a task that must be completed, a darkness that must be confronted. And while your life may not involve literal battles against external evil, the internal battles are no less real, no less significant. The battle against your own complacency, the battle against your own cynicism, the battle against the part of you that wants to give up, to retreat into numbing and distraction, to stop caring because caring hurts too much. These are the dragons that matter, because these are the dragons that determine whether you will live a life of authenticity or a life of quiet desperation. And here is the truth that no one speaks about the chosen one archetype. It is lonely, not because you are alone in the literal sense, but because the path of consciousness is one that fewer people choose to walk than you might hope. Most people are content, or at least resigned, to live within the boundaries of consensus reality, to accept the stories they've been told about who they are and what life is for. And there is no judgment in this observation. Consciousness comes at a cost, and not everyone is willing or able to pay that cost. But for those who are, for those who feel the pull so strongly that they cannot ignore it, there's a particular kind of solitude, the solitude of seeing what others do not see, of feeling what others do not feel, of caring about things that others dismiss as unimportant. This solitude can become bitterness if you are not careful. It can become a sense of superiority, a looking down on those who remain asleep, a hardening of the heart. But the true journey moves through this temptation and arrives at something softer, something more compassionate. You begin to understand that everyone is exactly where they need to be for their own soul's journey. You begin to trust that consciousness awakens when it is ready, that forcing it only creates resistance, that the most powerful thing you can do is live your truth so fully and authentically that it becomes an invitation, not a demand for others to explore their own. This is a shift from messianic thinking to humble service. The messianic impulse says, I have the answer and you need to listen to me. Humble service says, I have walked a path, and if anything I have learned is useful to you, it is yours. The messianic impulse creates hierarchy and division. Humble service creates connection and mutual respect. And this distinction is crucial because the spiritual ego, the part of you that wants to be special, chosen, enlightened, will try to hijack the journey and turn it into another performance, another way to be better than others. Vigilance against this impulse is part of the work, the willingness to check your motives, to question your certainties, to remain open to the possibility that you are wrong, that you are projecting, that you are still caught in patterns you have not yet seen. The deepest teaching of the chosen one archetype is not that some people are chosen and others are not. It is that the choosing is something you do moment by moment, breath by breath. You choose to stay awake when it would be easier to fall asleep. You choose to feel when it would be safer to numb. You choose to speak your truth when it would be more comfortable to stay silent. You choose to love even when love makes you vulnerable. And these choices, small and unglamorous as they are the substance of the heroic journey. Not the grand gestures, not the dramatic revelations, but the daily, humble commitment to being as conscious and compassionate as you are capable of being in this moment, with the understanding that tomorrow you may be capable of more. And as you make these choices, something begins to happen. The sense of isolation begins to shift. Not because you suddenly find a community of people who think exactly like you, though you may, but because you begin to feel connected to something larger than your individual story. You begin to sense the presence of all the others who have walked this path before you, the mystics and the seekers and the rebels and the poets who refused to accept the world as it was and insisted on seeing it as it could be. You begin to feel held by the lineage of consciousness itself, the unbroken thread of awakening that runs through human history, invisible but undeniable. This connection is not mediated by institutions or authorities. It is direct, immediate, felt in the body and the heart. It is the recognition that you are part of a great unfolding, a cosmic process of evolution toward greater complexity, greater awareness, greater love. And your individual life, small and fleeting as it is, matters in this unfolding, not because you are special, but because every point of consciousness matters. Every choice to turn toward a light rather than away from it creates a ripple that touches a whole. The trials you have faced, the pain you have endured, the loneliness you have felt, none of it was meaningless. It was a crucible in which your soul was forged, the fire that burned away everything that was not essential, leaving only what is true. And what is true in you is the same as what is true in everyone, the longing to be seen, to be loved, to belong, to contribute, to matter. The difference is that you have been forced, by circumstance or temperament or some combination of both, to confront this longing directly, to strip away the illusions that allow most people to avoid the confrontation. And now, having confronted it, having walked through the valley of your own darkness, you emerge not as someone who has arrived, but as someone who is forever arriving, forever becoming, forever deepening. The journey does not end. There is no final destination where all questions are answered and all wounds are healed. But there is a peace that comes from accepting this, from releasing the need for completion and embracing the process itself as sacred. This peace is not passive. It is not resignation or defeat. It is the peace of a warrior who has laid down the need to fight against what is and instead directs all energy toward creating what could be. It is the peace of someone who has stopped trying to control the uncontrollable and instead focuses on what is actually within their power, their own thoughts, their own words, their own actions. It is the peace of radical responsibility, the understanding that while you are not responsible for everything that happens to you, you are responsible for how you respond to everything that happens to you. As we move toward the closing of this reflection, toward the integration of all that has been spoken, perhaps you feel that these words have touched something in you, something that needed to be remembered. And if you wish to continue this exploration, to dive deeper into the mysteries of the psyche and the soul, know that this is only one of many conversations we will share, and your presence here, your willingness to listen and reflect, is a gift to this unfolding. The great secret that shakes the world is not a secret at all, but a truth so simple and so obvious that it is constantly overlooked. You are not broken. You were never broken. The systems that taught you to see yourself as insufficient, as not enough, as needing to be fixed or saved or completed by something outside yourself, those systems are what is broken. And your refusal to accept their verdict, your insistence on looking deeper, on questioning the narratives, on trusting your own inner knowing even when it contradicts everything you've been taught, that is not delusion. That is sanity. That is a return to your original nature, the nature you had before the world told you who to be. And this return is not about rejecting the world or transcending your humanity or escaping into some spiritual fantasy. It is about being more human, not less, more vulnerable, more honest, more willing to show up in the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of being alive in a body, in relationship, in a world that is both broken and sacred, both painful and exquisite. The chosen one is not the one who escapes the human condition, but the one who inhabits it so fully, so consciously, so courageously, that they become a living bridge between what is and what is possible. You do not need to save the world. The world does not need saving. It needs witnesses, people who are willing to see it clearly, to feel it deeply, to love it fiercely despite all its flaws and failures. It needs people who can hold both the tragedy and the beauty, who can weep for what is lost and fight for what can be preserved, who can sit with despair without becoming cynical and hold hope without becoming naive. This is the work of consciousness, not to fix or solve or conquer, but to be present, to be awake, to be responsive to what life asks of you in each moment. And what life is asking of you now is simply this: to stop waiting for permission, to stop looking for external validation, to stop postponing your own becoming until some future moment when you feel ready or worthy or certain. You will never feel completely ready. You will never be free of doubt. You will never have all the answers. But you have enough. You are enough. And the call that has been echoing in your heart, quiet or loud, gentle or insistent, that call is real. And it is time to answer it, not with grand pronouncements or dramatic gestures, but with a simple, humble commitment to show up as yourself fully and authentically, and to trust that your presence, your particular way of seeing and being and loving, is exactly what the world needs from you. This is the great secret. Not that you are chosen above others, but that you have chosen yourself, have said yes to the journey of becoming conscious, becoming whole, becoming real. And in that choosing, you join the invisible lineage of all who have ever dared to question, to seek, to grow, to love beyond the boundaries of what is safe and acceptable. You are not alone. You have never been alone. And the path ahead, uncertain as it is illuminated not by some external light, but by the light you carry within, the light that's been there all along, waiting for you to stop, to breathe, to remember who you have always been beneath all the forgetting. Walk forward now, not as someone who's been chosen by fate, but as someone who has chosen consciousness, chosen growth, chosen love. Walk forward with humility, knowing how much you do not know. Walk forward with courage, willing to face whatever arises. Walk forward with compassion for yourself and for all beings. And trust that the path will reveal itself one step at a time, not because you are special, but because you are awake, and awakeness is its own reward, its own destination, its own homecoming.